Coming up on this week's episode of Once a Duck.
But it just shows how well they're doing in recruiting, how dogged they are in recruiting. They're going out there. They have players that are on their list to go get from wherever they might be in different parts of the country, and they're going and getting them to commit and come play in Eugene.
All that and more coming up next.
Where's your favorite place to take college game day? And I say every time, Eugene, Oregon.
That's right, Duck fans. We are back after a bye with another episode of the Once a Duck podcast. I am Sam Schmidt. With me, as always, the host of this show, the man, the myth, the legend. It's Nick Cody, everybody. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. And thank you to everybody that follows on all our social media platforms at Once a Duck, or me individually at Nick R. Cody, or at Samuel101TS, wherever it is. We appreciate you following us. We hope you're subscribed on YouTube. That's the best place to see us and hear us. And we are going to be talking not only a little bit briefly here about the bye week, but obviously the big win over Oregon State, the Oregon offense and offensive line specifically getting very back on track, in my opinion. Sam, what was it like there down in Reser Stadium in Corvallis?
Well, I'll tell you what, Nick, it's always a pleasure to be able to check out Corvallis, Oregon, just to be able to go down there. And I know you're saying, wow, that sounds crazy. Why would you want to say that? And I got to tell you why. It's because every time I've been to Corvallis, Oregon, it's to celebrate an Oregon victory. It's the only time I've ever found myself in the city. Basketball, volleyball, football, I'll tell you what, it's the same result every time, and that's an Oregon win. But, Nick, it was a beautiful day. It was the warmest Civil War I can remember, probably the warmest on record. We were in T-shirts the whole time. We were having a good time outside, tailgating outside the stadium with some very, very receptive, warm, and welcoming Beaver fans. So I do have to give them credit for that. Had a lot of fun hanging out before the game. Got in there, had a guest student section pass for this game, so I was able to hang out with a family friend who goes to Oregon State. We're right there behind the goal post in the end zone. Had so much fun. Enjoyed watching that ball game. Enjoyed watching the Oregon offense come right to us, run right away from us. No matter what, they were fine in the end zone.
Well, and it was probably a much better experience for you than many Oregon fans and Oregon teams that have been in there with the chainsaw revved up in close games. Because you know what? While this was a pretty close first half and the Beavers played a pretty damn good time of possession based game, the Ducks just came away near perfect play from Dylan Gabriel, man. Just starting off the game really strong and able to finish strong. And the first time we actually get some backups into a game this season, see exactly what we have out of UCLA transfer Dylan Moore. Just a little bit there in the late. And, you know, it's not quite a true road game, but it's great to see at least the Ducks be able to take everything that, you know, it feels like everybody had been talking about and making it happen, and this being a team that we definitely could see ranked in the top 10 as opposed to the performance we'd seen from the first 2 weeks in Austin.
Well, it was so good to be able to see those guys get out there, whether it was Dante, like you mentioned, whether it was guys like Harris, who was able to get involved, some of those younger receivers able to get out on the field for the first time, even be able to get the offensive line a little bit of movement or get the defense some movement. That was all very good to see. And I got to tell you, you're absolutely right. The first half, even if it might have not have looked at it statistically, you're going into halftime, a 22-14 game. It was a ball game right there going into the second half. And I got to tell you, at halftime, it felt as if Oregon State was doing exactly what we said they would do here on the podcast. Slow the game down, make it run-oriented, put Oregon in a position where they're just going to have to wait to get the ball back a long time, probably going to lose some momentum in that time, probably not going to be able to have to come out with the exact same firepower. And in the first half, Oregon did require some long drives to get things going, to be able to finally find the end zone as they did those 3 times in the first half. Second half was a different story, though. The Oregon defense was all over the place. The adjustments at halftime were clear. They were obvious. It was so good to be able to see them recognize the issues, be able to attack them, Oregon State was running off the right side of that offensive line the entire first half. Oregon was able to step up and stop it. Really good adjustment for the Ducks, and it was great to be able to hold Oregon State scoreless in that second half, coming away 27-0 in that second half for a 49-14 victory.
Yeah. And another big important takeaway that is huge: penalties. When you're on the road in a hostile environment, even though it isn't the biggest stadium, it's loud. Beavers fans are getting loud. You can confirm you were there. And you know what? The offensive line, for the first time this season, really came together, felt unified, and played a clean game.
You're absolutely right. Oregon had 3 penalties in that ball game, as opposed to double-digit numbers we had seen previously in the season. 3 penalties for 36 yards. This was also the first game this season they had fewer penalties than their opponent. Oregon State had 6 for 65 yards. That made such an immediate difference. It wasn't necessarily just keeping Dylan Gabriel clean, which helped tremendously and was probably the leading factor toward the offense's improvement. But it was also the fact that Oregon wasn't putting themselves in 1st and 15, 1st and 20 positions. Everything was achievable moving forward. There were no 2nd and real longs. There were no 3rd and real longs. Everything was moving on schedule in a way that the Oregon offense hadn't been able to do so all season.
Absolutely. And I think, not in terms of, to forget, special teams, but just not playing mostly mistake free in terms of special teams, getting Atticus out there, getting him, in a comfortable stadium for him, getting him some points on the board, and especially getting a technically blocked field goal. That was a good way to get things started off, especially because it was seeming like on 3rd down, everything, all right, we've got them in just position, and they were able to scramble away a couple times in that first half. We were able to shut that down in the second half, and a huge part of that was them not being able to put points on the board on that drive. And when you get a blocked field goal, man, as we'll talk a little bit about in our UCLA topic, man, it kind of makes you know that you're in for a tough offensive day when you get a field goal blocked.
And another special teams note that I think is so important: as good as the special teams were against Boise State in terms of returning the ball, something we spoke about was issues covering kicks. We talked about it against Idaho too. In this game, the longest return for Oregon State was 19 yards on a kickoff. No punting at all in that game. No punt return yards at all in that game. The only kickoffs, there were 3 of them for 50 yards, a long of 19. That is so much better from this Oregon team. Not having any punts is a big part of it because, yes, punt coverage was the more poor of the 2 coverages. A lot of the time, Sappington is just able to bang it out of the back of the end zone. But still, to be able to limit the opportunities, 3 for 50 yards and the long was 19, that means between the other 2, you've got about 31 yards right there. That's doing a really, really good job in coverage.
Absolutely, man. And those hidden yards right there, the difference in football games, and especially right there, comes down to it in the second half, especially in situations where the other team is trying to squeeze the ball, squeeze the time out of the clock. And Oregon State was able to at least execute that game plan in the first half. In the second half, the Ducks, efficiency on offense, I think that's the best way to say it. Just turning every drive into points was just too much for the Beavers.
It overwhelmed them clearly. Like they were very clearly in a position where they were doing a good job staying tit for tat, if you will, at least pretty much through the first half. You go to the halftime, a 1-score game, most people are going to be like, all right, that's fine, especially when you're dealing with a top 10 team in the nation. That second half, though, as you mentioned, it piled on quick. It piled on really, really quick for Oregon State having to deal with it. As we know, you come out in the 3rd quarter, Sappington knocks down the 25-yard field goal. Then immediately after that, when you get the ball back, just an absolute killer drive, 75 yards, 9 plays. Jordan James punches in a touchdown. Oregon State's already scrambling at that point. They're doing what they can. They're having to try to throw the ball with a quarterback who is talented, but also isn't really known for throwing the ball like that. By the time Oregon's able to get the ball back, Whittington touchdown, Lamar touchdown, Sappington field goal at the end. It got away from Oregon State, and there's no other way to put it. It got away from them, and that's what this Oregon team has to be doing to teams.
Yep. And well, we'll just wrap it up with, instead we usually do our top 3 recently, but we'll just go with our top players. And I'm going to take the easy pick right away, Dylan Gabriel. I mean, this is why you bring in a transfer quarterback like this. He showed his efficiency, his ability to distribute the ball, and got a nice big play, 54-yard running touchdown. That was a lot of fun to see, man, even though, a little worried at the end, but that's why you got everybody down there to block for you. It wasn't the fastest quarterback running touchdown we've seen here in the Oregon program, but it sure was a great one to see up in Research Stadium.
Man, Nick, I wish I had the discipline to hold it to one player like you do. That's so impressive because I look at this list and there's at least two I would like to say four, at least two that really come to mind.
Go for it.
Tez Johnson, 7 catches, 110 yards, a long of 27. That just means you're being consistent. You're being the guy that your quarterback needs you to be. You're consistently getting to that first down marker. You're just making the plays you have to make. There's no big, huge 65, 45-yard play. It's a lot of really consistent, getting the job done type of play from Tez Johnson, which is exactly what you expect from him. Also, he wasn't one of our players of the game for either of the last 2 games, but he made honorable mention for both of them, so I'm mentioning him here. Bryce Betcher's the leading tackler on this team, and somebody has to just stand here and say, hey, I know we mentioned about 3 or 4 other linebackers when we were getting ready for this season. Betcher's the two-sport athlete. He's out here doing all the dirty stuff for both teams. He's going to do everything you need him to do. 11 total tackles, 5 of them were solo, and he was getting end-to-end. I think the thing that's impressed me most from him this year is that he seems to have improved his quickness. He seems like he's able to get from side to side a lot faster than he was last year. Something that I really didn't know if we would see from a guy who got drafted into the MLB and for all intents and purposes doesn't have to be doing that, but he is, and it's incredible.
Yeah, I really loved, I'm glad you mentioned that. Loved our team captain selection for the last game, all native Oregonians, and then huge play from Betcher. Man, like the kid is playing with instincts that, just a few guys I've seen and played against that kind of had that it's transitioning the speed and recognition together. And he is playing lights out right now and reminds me of a lot of times when I saw Kiko Alonso or Casey Matthews with just that precognition to know where the ball is going, where they fit in there, and to just come and lay the wood when they need to. And it's been awesome to see him playing lights out, and especially in this, his obviously last Civil War game.
Well, and I'm glad that you bring up the recognition aspect because I know I'm saying he's quicker, but that's frankly probably what it is. It has less to do with the literal speed, more to do with has so much better of an understanding of where he needs to be, where the play is moving, where he's got to get to. It's been really impressive to see from him all season.
Yeah, whatever it is, I'll take a whole lot more of it, especially going into UCLA week. And for UCLA week, we have a very special guest. And man, he's another Hall of Famer, guy that used to play with me on that 2010 championship team. We got to talk to Drew Davis. All right, Once a Duck fans, we've got one of my favorite teammates and the perfect guest for this week as we go in to face the UCLA Bruins. Give it up for former Oregon Duck wide receiver and also former director of player development at UCLA, Drew Davis. How you doing, Drew? Thanks for joining us.
I'm good. You don't have to lie to him and say I'm one of your favorite people, man. I'm pretty sure people tune into the show regardless.
Hey man, it's the truth. I know, especially recently, again, to see your face again in Sports Chat 503 occasionally. I'm always loving your analysis, and it's great to have you on here. Now, as we get into it, we just come off a big Civil War win. I know how much the Civil War means to you. How great was it to see the Ducks finally kind of come into rhythm this season, and what was your experience like for that game?
Honestly, it was really great. I know they've heard a lot of chatter as far as what they need to do. This team doesn't look like the team from last year. The world is falling, Chicken Little, everything like that. But I'm a fan of the O-line, and so I know how tough it is for the offensive line to have to put everything together. Whether you're talking about running the ball or passing it, protecting the quarterback, and it just shows the resiliency and the resolve of those guys up front to get it together, to put together a good week of practice, and to come out there and to make sure that nobody laid a hand on Dylan Gabriel. So kudos to them, hats off to them. And just honestly, it was great to see the Civil War going on. And it was also strange to see it so early in the year. It's never happened like that before. But I guess it's the first time for everything.
No, I can agree with you right there. That was the first Civil War game I've ever been able to witness wearing a t-shirt. And I got to tell you, it was a pretty good time doing so. Drew, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that offensive line. It's something Nick and I talked about on this podcast already. But from your perspective, Just how much easier is it for an offense to operate when the guy who's doing all of the work is able to do it clean?
It means the world. Offensive linemen, they have the hardest job because they do their job and nobody touches the quarterback. Cool, you did what you're supposed to. If the pocket's not clean and people are getting hit, then it's like, oh, it's the worst game in the world, and you guys are horrible. And you guys should hang up your cleats. But it just makes everything flow better. It just helps everything go when everything is operating up front. You can run the ball, you can pass the ball, you can screen, you can draw, you can throw the ball out to the wide receivers, and they can get busy. So it just allows you a lot of different avenues and gives the play caller just a lot more leeway to just have some fun and dial up some stuff that can put some points on the board.
See, man, first two questions, you're already buttering up the offensive linemen. See, this is why I was speaking the truth. I love you, man. What one of my favorite blocking wide receivers of all time. What's it like for you to look at the kind of wide receivers and the caliber of wide receivers that Oregon's been recruiting under Dan Lanning and being able to bring into the program?
It's awesome to see it just overall. I know when we were going to school, there weren't many. We had a couple 4-star guys, but we weren't sitting here bringing in 5-star guys from this place or that place. I think a little bit after me, I think DeAnthony Thomas might have been one of the first 5 stars to come, a guy that we're surprised to get. But it just shows how well they're doing in recruiting, how dogged they are in recruiting. They're going out there. They have players that are on their list to go get from wherever they might be in different parts of the country, and they're going and getting them to commit and come play in Eugene. And so just seeing that speaks a lot to the coaching staff. It speaks a lot to how they've changed what they're doing and how important it is to them now just to get the best players in the country to go out and possibly compete and win a national championship. And so it's just awesome to see. I know we've always had pretty much a great quarterback back there throwing the ball, from guys when I played, Dennis Dixon to Jeremiah Masoli to Justin Herbert, and the list goes on and on and on. But to be able to have guys that you can throw to that are going to be some guys that usually go to the LSUs or the Ohio States or the USCs is going to be fun to watch for fans, and it's going to be fun for the guys that are on the team.
Well, just to put a little bit of an addition on what Nick said there, not just a great downfield blocker, according to the University of Oregon's own website from 2010, the team's best downfield blocker, which feels worthy of note. But to continue with that same line of questioning, coming from the position you were just in in the player development with UCLA, what were you seeing kind of across the lines, if you will? What is Dan Lanning, this Oregon staff, do so well that's bringing so many recruits that would have gone historically to the UCLAs, the USCs, or across the country and bringing them up to Eugene?
I think Oregon, we've always been one of the best kept secrets. We just always kind of just operate at a level as far as like we're flashy with the jerseys and whatnot, but just as far as what we do in house has kind of usually been kept under wraps and not blown out to big proportions. And now you have cinematic style reels and recruiting videos and practice videos being put out daily, if not weekly. And I think when people see that, and it matters, like recruiting now is more so a full-time job of this is what we do on an everyday basis. This is what we do after wins. This is what we do on an off day. This is what, so you're getting everything and an up close look at everything. And who would not want to walk through that facility or be around and rubbing elbows with those people or singing shout in the fourth quarter as we go into the fourth. But just doing all those things, they've made it pretty much a battle of we have fun here, we win football games here, we dress really nice here. Like, what else do you want? What do you want to do? We got it here for you. So they're doing a really good job at that. And then they're also leading to the NIL aspect of it with Uncle Phil's money. And that's always a good thing too.
So, one thing that Coach Kelly taught all our teams was, to practice for unexpected changes. And one unexpected change you already can't prepare for is changing conferences. Another is having your coach leave to go be offensive coordinator for another team in that same conference. What do you see with the challenges UCLA has faced this year and some of the things that you've experienced, at least being in that program, and the differences between that and Oregon?
Yeah, I just think you hit the nail on the head going into a new conference. But then once you lose your head coach a little bit before the recruiting cycle and just having players that might not come that you've targeted from the transfer portal, I think UCLA is doing a great job of kind of starting from, I wouldn't say ground zero, but probably from the first or second level and you have to establish a new culture with this program. Deshaun is a first year head coach and learning along the way as he goes, and I think he's going to be very good at it. But those are the combinations of things that you kind of never really want to happen, whether you're an athletic director or a fan of a program where it seems like you're headed in the right direction, and then there's super sudden change like that. But now UCLA is also leaning more into, hey, we're in LA. Hey, there's movies here. There's entertainers here. Hey, you can come to UCLA, get a great education, play football, and then also rub elbows with some very influential people. And so they're more so now using that, and just having Deshaun, who played there, who bleeds the powder blue. It means a little. It means a lot more to him, not just a little bit. It means a lot more to him to get people there and return it back to prominence and get them back in the Rose Bowl. So that takes a combination of things that happen. But I feel that the hunger is there to just not be UCLA as a whole, to be like, hey, we want to get back to being good at UCLA football.
And I think UCLA football is a brand that the West Coast, the Big Ten in general, is banking will be able to rebuild itself into a version of the UCLA that many people had grown accustomed to. One of the questions I had for you, Drew, it's always fascinating for me, especially to hear from guys about what it was like to take on those kind of teams now versus how you see them then, the kind of differences. I know in your history, Oregon went to UCLA a couple of times for a couple of very interesting ball games. A 16-0 defeat back in 07, but then the Nate Costa led victory in 2009. Something that I was kind of curious about from your perspective is going down to Pasadena, having to play in the Rose Bowl, the spectacle that it is, the moment that it is. What was it like for a player having to go out on that field just to take on UCLA in that environment? And then what was it like to be able to go out there wearing the powder blue?
It's funny because at Oregon we had a lot of our teammates who were from California, so playing in the granddaddy of them all, or just even playing at USC and UCLA, is different for them because they grew up watching it or wanting to go there, and for one reason or another they didn't. But being able to go to the Rose Bowl and play in a Rose Bowl like we did, it means a lot because when we were at Oregon, that's what they would talk about. Like, hey, let's get to 8, 9, 10 wins. Let's get to the Rose Bowl because we haven't been there since 95, 96. And it mattered because it's like when we were slated to play at UCLA during the year, it's like, okay, this can be a preview to us being back here on January 1. And that means a lot. And there's not very many fields back in the day or even now that are 100% grass where you can go and you can play on this stuff that you're playing on when you were a kid and running around, and you can just really feel like 100% what it's like to, like, hey, this is really real football. Putting on the powder blue for me, I got to learn more about the lineage of UCLA. I got to see more of the history of it. I got to see more of the educational aspect of it and the academic aspect of it. And so they've had a lot of notable people to come through UCLA. And I think that says a lot about it being out there first location in California. As Deshaun would say, we're located in California, we're located in Los Angeles. Um, but outside of that, it was just great to be on campus in December, January, February, and it's 75, 80 degrees, or you're walking some recruits around and somebody's filming something. It might be, one of those movies with A-listers, or it just might be some students filming on campus. So UCLA is a very interesting place, and just to be there and representing another Pac-12 school to see how other people do it was very interesting to me, and just a time I'll cherish because it was down to UCLA and Oregon for me when I was choosing between colleges. So for me, it was just a very full circle moment and saying, hey, well, this what it might have been like if I went here. And it's pretty cool that I'm experiencing it now.
Well, Drew is one of the, people that was able to help influence and hopefully develop the next generation of great young men coming out of UCLA for a bit. What is the biggest thing that you took from our era as Oregon Ducks and applied that to being in your position at UCLA?
Honestly, I told them to embrace the climb. And so, me being my freshman year at Oregon, just for a bowl game recap, we went to the Sun Bowl, the Holiday Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and the National Championship. And for me, that was great because I got to know that, hey, I never want to go back to El Paso again. I'm cool if I never see there any time in my life again. But it helps you to figure out what hard work is and what being a team is about and what the off seasons look like if you want to get 8, 9, 10 wins, be undefeated. And I don't think as a team we set out to say, like, hey, we want to play in the national championship. I think we said, hey, let's play every week as tough as we can. Let's continue to grow. I think when it came time, it was like, let's get back to the Rose Bowl again. That was fun. We lost to Ohio State. Like we need some retribution from that. But I tell them to, like, it's harder with this younger generation because you're like, taking your lumps builds character, and nobody wants to sit out here and go lose by 20 or 30 or 40. But when you look around at your teammates, you can really see who you're in the locker room with. The people that give up, the people that throw their hat in, the people that are like, man, it was cool when we was winning and now we lost 2 games and I'm good on this football stuff. So it lets you know about the people around you for later on in football and just later on in life on who you can count on. So embrace that, and also just learn about yourself through the process.
Drew, I wanted to ask you, from your familiarity with this UCLA team, what does Oregon need to be able to do to be able to put down on the field to come away victorious, but also come away feeling as if they've built off the last game and are continuing to build throughout Big Ten play?
I think they need to continue to keep their foot on the pedal. They did that with getting to the line quickly against Oregon State, doing a lot of different stuff, running empty, forcing them to really spread them out to say, okay, who are we going to guard and how are we going to guard them to declare if we're playing man or zone. I would say they need to do that. And UCLA is still trying to find their footing with their offensive coordinator. And I think they found a little bit of that down at LSU in a hostile environment. They're still looking for their very first home win. The Ducks travel really well, so the Rose Bowl will be packed and loud. And so those are things that set you up to, it's good to play in that environment, but also the team that's getting that as far as a home team in this situation, they're going to come ready to play, and nothing will be bigger than for Deshaun to get his first win at home against the Ducks, against a top 10 ranked team. And so those are the trap games you got to watch out for, where you're like, okay, well, they're not playing too good, but they're still finding their footing. And I think that's something to be aware of.
Yeah, one of the, major factors too is this is the first true road test this season. As we know, you're definitely going into enemy territory up in Corvallis, but you get to stay at the team hotel, you get to roll up in the buses, whole different game plan when you're at least, loading up everybody on the planes and loading up the equipment trucks. So what do you think this Ducks team needs to do to take this truly on the road and progress from what we've seen in Corvallis down to Pasadena?
Like I said, just keep their foot on the pedal, not get too distracted. Like I said, a lot of the players are from California. So with that comes families, sisters, brothers, nieces, coaches. But just keeping in their mind that this is a business trip and that they're still on a mission. They've been doing really well at that. Defense has been playing, honestly, lights out as well. But when I look at it from just the offensive standpoint and the point of view, Dylan Gabriel's, I think, is he leading the nation in completion percentage? He's pretty high up there, probably top 5. But just continuing to go, go, go. I think the weather is going to be in the 90s. I know it's a night game. Those are always the toughest too, I would say. Sitting around the hotel all day until you play at 8 o'clock at night isn't the funnest. But you got to show up and be ready to play. So I would just say, show up, put on your helmet like you would any other game. And go out there and take care of business. This game isn't bigger than any game. This game isn't less important than any game. Just having that mindset of this is the next game.
Drew, I know we don't want to take up too much more of your time. I've got a question for you, though, that I'm not sure if you've had to answer before, but I know there's several Duck fans that are probably wondering it.
Okay.
2010, finish an undefeated season. Jerry Allen's going crazy up in the booth. Duck fans are starting to pour onto the field. Just before that, you were having a conversation with Chip Kelly right as he was getting a Gatorade bath. What were you telling Chip at the time that was able to distract him just long enough?
I just asked them. I said, "Hey, do we have 12 people out there?" Coaches they don't like that because they don't want no penalty to end the game, or they're just like, "Who messed up? Who effed up?" So I just said, "Hey, do we have too many people out there?" The people that came with the Gatorade were a little bit early. I think it was Hoff and Huff. But outside of that, then he grabbed me and made sure I got wet too. So that was it was fun. It was one of those feelings. I never really thought I would get a Gatorade bath like that. But then after that, he just yelled at me and told me I set him up. And I was like, nah, it wasn't my idea. It wasn't my idea. I just wanted to make sure that, it was done the right way. And so that was funny in that respect, but it was fun.
As we've discussed on previous episodes, Chip was a master at getting out of the Gatorade bath, man. He had that sixth sense. So you were a necessary cog in the plan there. But I got to ask you something a little off topic. But being an undrafted free agent and your experience in Atlanta as a wide receiver and in the NFL in general, what's it been like for you this year to see mainly like the first year that the passing game is actually trending downwards in the NFL? And what do you think is the cause of that?
Honestly, I love it. I love seeing that. I thought the game was getting out of control.
Yeah.
With people coming to, hey, well, we're not throwing for 400 yards. Um, One of the reasons is I think having younger quarterbacks. I was actually just talking about this with a friend. We've had a very good life for the sports fans who are in there, probably mid 20s and up to 40. You talk about Tom Brady, you talk about Drew Brees, Philip Rivers, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning. I'm missing a handful. Matthew Stafford, who's still playing, Russell Wilson, who's still playing, and there's a few more in there that I could sprinkle in. But these are guys who went on teams for 10, 15, 20 years where you knew what your quarterback play was going to be like. And we saw a lot of injuries last year with the quarterback, and then we see 6 first-round quarterbacks go this past year in the draft. And I think coordinators, more so than anything, are just like, hey, well, if everybody's adjusting their defense to be more pass ready and to defend the pass. So the boxes are lighter. We're going to be able to run a little bit more. We have 3 preseason games now. I don't think people are in shape like they used to be when there was 4 or when people were actually playing. And so I think you have people saying, let me put our quarterback in better position. We don't have to sit out here and score 30, 40 points. Let's slow the game down. And Jim Harbaugh is one of my favorite because he's going to have a good offensive line. He's going to run the football and he's going to play defense. And so I think people are like, hey, let's slow the game down. Let's actually give these running backs who are really good, 1 or 2 of them that we have in the backfield. Let's make sure we give them some carries. Let's make sure we don't sit here and try to throw the ball 40 or 50 times and let these defensive ends who are some of the highest paid in the league, like Myles Garrett, like Micah Parson, and let them tee off on our quarterback so he's hurt again as we go into this year. So I think it's a multitude of things, but I just think coaches are finally being like, yo, it's not the craziest thing to establish the run and to really lean on that so our quarterback can be better in the end.
Well, I think that sounds like the exact answer you would expect from a terrific downfield blocker who's for sure going to be able to get his head in on those kind of plays. Drew, the last one I've got for you, and it's a question that I actually haven't been able to ask so far yet this season on the show, and I'm always happy to. Give me a favorite road and give me a favorite home uniform combo while at Oregon.
Ooh, I don't even know him. It's funny because I don't really know him. For some reason, all I just know is Stormtrooper White. That's all I know. I just remember wearing that at USC. I remember it was a clean look from head to toe. For my generation, I could say. And then I would say that's away. But the one I really like, the one I wasn't able to wear, would be the one the Ducks wore where they really looked like ducks, where they had the green top, the white bottom, and the orange shoes and socks, which I think was a great play on what they were doing, a great marketing tool. I wish I could have wore it, but those are 2 of my favorites. One that I was able to wear, and then one that I was not able to wear.
Oh man. So I'm gonna ask just one last question, just out of my own curiosity. I'm just been dying to know it. Of all the venues you've gotten to play football, the Rose Bowl being one of the coolest. What was your favorite overall?
I think that's tough because I think there's a difference between my favorite to play in and then also the atmosphere that was
Mhm.
fun to play in. And for some reason, I always go back to the Arizona game in 2009, or yeah, 2009,
Yep.
um, when they were pretty much rushing the field and we're about to lose, and it's only just a matter of time before we don't get into the end zone, but we end up getting there. But having a whole student section on the field, within 5 yards of getting on the field. I think that I caught a pass on that drive and I went out of bounds and they were pretty much right there. but just that atmosphere where, it's just us on the team. It feels like it's, a million against one. Arizona's a very hostile place to play. It's a very fun place to play, especially when they start playing that Sandman, whatever, Enter the Sandman or whatever they play. And just knowing what was on the line too, a berth at a Rose Bowl and matchup next week in the Civil War. So that was probably my favorite experience of a stadium. And they play us very tough, and throughout the time they beat us there a couple times as well. But that's probably my favorite experience and my favorite stadium to play in.
All right. I believe it's Seven Nation Army from
Yeah.
the White Stripes. There we go. But yeah, Virginia Tech's going to come and get our video canceled if we don't get that corrected here. Drew, thanks again for coming on with us again. Another Hall of Fame Duck from the same class. Proud to be one of your teammates. And as always, once a Duck, always a Duck, brother. Go Ducks.
Thanks, fellas.
Nick, it's always a pleasure to be able to have somebody on here, especially with the understanding, not only for the Oregon program that Drew has, but also his knowledge of UCLA and the matchup that's going to be coming up this Saturday night. Before we get into our UCLA coverage, though, Nick, I do have a question for you, a little bit of trivia, if you will.
Ooh,
A little
let's go
trivia
for it.
time. Since the year of our Lord 2000, since 2K, the switch of the millennia, Oregon and UCLA have faced off every single season, but a mere handful. Examples of those being 2005 and 2012. A question I have for you: how many times has Oregon lost to UCLA since the turn of the millennia?
Oh, I know. One was when I was a committed recruit, and that was that 2007 game.
An ugly one that I feel bad about mentioning already.
Yeah. And then I want to say 2016 and 17. But I'll say 3. My answer's 3.
Okay.
The details are probably wrong.
You've got 2 out of 3 right.
Okay.
2007 was a 16-0 loss.
2017.
2017
Yep.
was indeed a 31-14 loss. A caveat for that game that's very important. That was during the Herbert is injured, so Braxton Burmeister is our quarterback era.
Yep.
Which I will say, one of the wastes of one of the greatest uniform combos of all time in that game. Chrome helmet, white jersey, and green pants.
Ooh, painful.
Yes. The other loss, 2004.
Ooh, I was itching towards 2003, but 2004, one of those years, it was definitely a surprising loss. I know for the program at the time, it seemed like
2004, that was a year where there were a few of those because of the Clemens injury and a couple of other things going on with the team. But yes, a 34-26 loss at UCLA. Those are the 3 losses. I'm just going to list off the years Oregon's won since 2000. 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2006, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2013, 2014, 2018, 20, 21, and 22.
Yep. Yeah. And got to experience quite a few of those myself, including most important one to me that, well, it's arguable, but the first Pac-12 championship game. Now, with how the Pac-12 is going, I don't know if my Pac-12 championship gear from that inaugural game has gone down in value in this past week, but it sure seems like it. But maybe I can sue the WAC or the Midwestern Conference, one of these conferences to get my value back. But I don't know, man. UCLA, it's just different. The vibes are different in the Rose Bowl. It was my very first start in the 2009 game, as we've talked about on previous episodes. And we've had some games there. We've had some good ones. We've had some tough ones, but at least every time I've come away victorious. And particularly as we talked with Drew, it's definitely huge for their culture to, build back up. This is a season for them that they're going to be dealing with a lot. And already we've seen in their first 3 weeks, I mean, when you go in week 1 and you win 16-13 in Hawaii in a game that I believe Oregon was initially to be playing in, that's a tough one. And then you're probably going to be in for a difficult season once you get to conference play. And well, we kind of saw that with the Indiana game. And then they battled back were able to play a little bit tougher against LSU, but it's just looking a lot like, based on at least the statistics and what I've seen in games, this could be a tough year for UCLA, and hopefully Oregon continues that, trajectory right now for at least one more game.
Well, I'm right there with you. I think this UCLA team, they did turn a little bit of a page last week. They looked a lot better against LSU in the first half than they looked at all this season, whether it was Hawaii or playing against Indiana. Either way, Garbers, he was very solid in that game for the most part, 22 of 36, 281 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. I think, and it's something that I know you want to hit on, a real weakness with this UCLA team seems to be the run game.
Yeah. It's a real problem when you get to this point in the season and your leading rusher has 72 total yards on the ground. And then when your second leading carrier is your quarterback, that's tough. Especially when not necessarily Garbers being known for an elite level runner. Probably
Well,
run a lot more than most people have in a career, but
well, and I'll tell you, Nick, he's second in total carries. He's
yep.
not second in yards. He's second in total
That's
carries.
my apologies. Those yardage. Well, then I don't know if you do the math with sack yardage. He's probably up there, but it's not a high it's not a high bar right there. Regardless, their offensive output right now has definitely not been, what you would hope for even a Big Ten team this season.
Well, and I think that's going to be something that UCLA comes out very, very focused on in this game. I think that if they don't come out and try to at least set the tone on the ground, they're going to be in a world of problem. We already know what Oregon's secondary is able to do. We already know what the pass rushers are able to do. We frankly know that this team actually is good against the run, but you're never going to be able to do anything you want to do against this Oregon team if you're not able to convince them to play you honest.
Yep.
Which is exactly what this UCLA team is going to have to do. For Garbers, I'm very, very curious to see how the senior is able to hold up. He's got a lot of experience. He's played a lot. If you remember, he was the one that threw the interception at the end of the game back in 2021 in the game that Dorian Thompson-Robinson ended up having to leave early. He's been with this program. He's played a lot of games with them. So far this season, 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 690 yards. Oregon's got a chance to be able to take advantage here. And frankly, if they're not able to, and by that I mean if they're not able to take care of business pretty effectively and pretty proficiently, we're going to be right back to having the type of conversations we were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's so true. And another big thing that, we got to factor in is this is the first true road test of the season. As we talked about with Drew, you got to deal with all the distractions that could potentially come with going down there, SoCal. At least mostly what we've had in Eugene has been nice weather so far. So that's not going to be too much different. But there are all kinds of distractions that just come with going on the road, being outside of your own team hotel, trying to get in the same routine. And then, it's a night game. And that's just, we had the Boise game, 7 p.m. kickoff. This will be an 8 p.m. kickoff. Those are just all things you have to adjust your schedule for, spend a lot of time in the team hotel waiting around. It's a later trip home. All these things you have to learn to kind of band together as brothers on the road and overcome. And definitely a great place to do it, at least. And one of the, I don't want to say less hostile environments, but one of the best venues overall just to go and be able to play a game, especially the very last week of, September, October, going into the fall. Like right now, this time of year, awesome. Great weather, one of the best scenes in all of college football.
Well, I'm hopeful, Nick, that this will be able to be that kind of atmosphere. Students should be at least getting back into town around that time. I know, Lord knows that Pasadena is a whole 3.5 cities over from where the actual campus is, but
Yeah.
you would like to be able to see some of that energy, some of that excitement for a top 10 team in the country that's going to be coming to town. That being said, there's going to be a lot of white in that stadium. It's a wear white game for Oregon fans. New white jerseys just came out. There's going to be a lot of people wearing them. There's going to be a lot of people in white there. You never want to say that a road atmosphere is not going to feel like a road atmosphere, but historically, Oregon fans travel very, very well down to UCLA, very well down to the Rose Bowl and down to Pasadena in general. I'll be very excited to see how, in fact, Duck fans travel and what kind of an atmosphere is built both by the UCLA fans and the Oregon fans in that ball game. Another thing I wanted to bring up to you really quick, Nick, and this felt important when looking back at UCLA's last matchup. They forced one punt from LSU.
Yep.
They forced one punt. They stayed in the game with them the entire time. It was tied at halftime. It was a one-score game going to the fourth quarter. They did their job and they stayed in this game. But when you look at the LSU drives, touchdown, UCLA got a stop on fourth down. Okay, great job. The second drive. After that, touchdown. Okay. Then was the one punt. And from then on, it just went field goal, touchdown, touchdown, field goal, drive out the game. And what that tells me is that Oregon's going to have a chance to play very similarly to they did at Oregon State, in that it's going to be a game where you start by building sustained drives. You start by wearing down that UCLA team. And by the third quarter, fourth quarter, you're able to make those big plays pop.
Yep. You got to pack it up, bring it down on the road with you, put it on the plane, make sure it's on the equipment truck. However, you got to get down there. Got to get it down there. I know the fans are going to help. Hopefully, it is a very similar situation where we're able to hear those Oregon fans there late in that game, getting a couple Go Ducks chants going. And just overall, it's the greatest thing. And it demoralizes the other team when you're able there to celebrate in those last few closing minutes of the game and your fans are leaving, but the opposing team's fans are just feeling like they're getting pumped. They're going to go see the players. There's nothing like that. And man, especially, they get a good shot of it right there on primetime television, and all the East Coast is already asleep and all the West Coasters are already nodding off. It's always a good shot. So I'm excited. I hope, that we can just continue to not just see us maintain this level of performance, but I would really love us just see us step the bar up even more, because at this point, I believe in this team. I've seen enough, especially on the defensive front, to believe we can be in any game we play. It'd be great to see us actually push towards playing to our full potential, especially in our first true road game.
Well, and Nick, speaking of that full potential, before we get into our score predictions for this game, what are just going to be some of the keys to you? What are the very simple but effective things Oregon can do out on the field to secure a victory Saturday?
Simple but effective things I wish I would have done in my first start down in the Rose Bowl. Not get a false start, no penalties. A false start, I think I might have had two. And then I got a field goal blocked. And it was a 59-yarder, but Rob Beard was kicking them in pregame. And you know what? Didn't get down low enough, got pushed back a little bit, low trajectory kick. I got it blocked. So you know what? The biggest thing, focus on the little details. It could just be a couple inches away from a block kick and a made field goal, and you never know when you're going to need those 3 points. So just detail oriented. The little things are exactly what we need to focus on to produce a big result and a big win. So every single one of those offensive linemen, I want to see them play penalty free again, move the line of scrimmage, keep the quarterback clean. And you know what? Ultimately, don't get us penalties. It makes it very easy to move the football. All you need is about 4 yards of play when you do that. And this offense is capable of producing that in a variety of ways. So that's what I want to see. I don't care who does it, who gets the ball, spread it around, Dylan. You know what? Spread it around. If we get more in there, I want to see everybody have a great day down in UCLA. And if we do that, it's going to be a good indicator for how this Big Ten season's going to go entering conference play.
Well, I'm right there with you, Nick. And I think that on the opposite side of the ball for the defense, it's just got to be shut down the run early, force UCLA to have to throw the ball, put them in the position where they are behind the chains, where they are behind schedule. They have to make big plays happen. As soon as UCLA was doing that, was in that position against LSU, you saw what was able to happen. They were able to stand up in coverage very well. And then those edge rushers, including former Duck Braden Swinson, able to get around the edge, cause a lot of problems with that team. Oregon has such a good group of rushers, whether it's Mateo, whether it's Tuioti, whether it's any of these other young guys that they have coming in, or the linebackers who like to shoot through. To see the Ducks be able to really make UCLA one-dimensional and then shut down that dimension will be exactly what this team needs to be able to do down in Los Angeles. Nick, final score prediction time. Everybody loves it. It's everybody's favorite. What's happening in this ball game down in the Rose Bowl?
The Oregon Ducks go down to Pasadena and they win 41-13. Another big solid game. I imagine we open it up on the ground and continue to have another very efficient night with very few, if any, punts. What do you think?
I like that a lot. I like those numbers. I'm leaning personally, and this was a weird one to come to, but I feel kind of confident with this weird score, if you will. I'm gonna go with a 45-16 score. I think that Oregon does give up a touchdown, but I feel like you can hold UCLA to field goals. I feel like this Oregon team can hold UCLA to field goals. I would love to be able to see that come to fruition. A touchdown, then maybe 3 field goals on top of that feels like about what I could see this team going out and doing if the Oregon defense does what they're supposed to do. And then 45 points for the offense. I think you're able to see 6 touchdowns, a field goal. Makes enough sense to me.
And you know what I think about? I think that all these picks this season, you've just been changing slightly off points for me. I think we're going to have to start holding it up on a piece of like paper here pretty soon at the same time. I don't trust you going second now, Sam. That's too
We
close
can
for
we
me.
can switch up we can switch up our timing here. I'm fine going first next time.
Okay. All
Next
right.
week I'll be going first. I'll predict first time Michigan State game. No problem.
Okay, fine. Then I'll be the one to slightly move the margin off of your numbers.
Perfect. Perfect.
And with that, let's get to some Twitter comments. Obviously, you want to start with our first one?
Yeah, let's start with our first one. We are going to be addressing a question from at Raymond Duck One. Mike, one of our favorite listeners. A big question is whether we can carry over the momentum from the OSU game or whether the bye week came at a bad time. Nick, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. Somebody who's been through a lot of those bye week scenarios after big games, after some slower games. Is it able to carry over? Is it something you have to do pretty consciously?
Yeah, I think a bye week is a great opportunity depending on what your situation is on the team. A lot of those guys that have been taking the most reps, especially in early in the season when we haven't been able to get as many of the twos in there as you usually are against non-conference opponents. It feels like this is a great time, especially after an early rivalry game, to get a little bit more rest for the guys that might be a bit banged up or rehabbing something. And you know what? The rest of the team, especially the younger guys, can really develop and get better, kind of get back on track to some of the progress you really end up making in fall camp if you aren't one of those guys getting those reps in the game week. So that's always huge. And it's always about the culture of the team and that decides whether that transitions or takes a week off. So I believe that, with everything we've heard from Coach Lanning and the way he's constantly preached, not just improvement for the players, but himself and his staff, I believe that they've learned to improve on a bye week. Just what the culture that they've established here at Oregon is. And it's exactly why I'm confident in this team continuing this, momentum, not just in this game, but throughout this season and into conference play. And a reply we got to Mike right there. Another one I liked from U of O Dad 2019 said, my big question is whether or not I'm going to stay awake till 2 a.m. Sunday morning. And I'm telling you, I feel it. I am a little bit disappointed in my situation. I'll be performing comedy on stage during most of the game. So gladly get on stage first, get off first, and then we'll have Jerry Allen in my ear for the rest of the night. But good luck to everybody staying up, whether you're on East Coast or the West Coast, all our Ducks out there. We're still glad you're watching and listening. And, we appreciate your support. All of us players, former players, always do because, man, there's nothing like being a Duck, Sam. And this year, especially after that last game, could be exactly the kind of special thing we all thought it was leading into this season.
It certainly could be, Nick, and I hope that's something that everyone around the country is able to watch. And another question we have, or comments we have, are often about these late start times, the 8 p.m. start time. We had a comment that was along the lines of like, why so late? No one's going to want to be there. No one's going to want to do any of this. And I think we have to have a very honest and real conversation for a moment. And I just have a general question for the Oregon audience. Did you think joining the Big Ten would mean that you wouldn't play West Coast football times? The Big Ten didn't go pick up Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA because they like having the colors in the map. They didn't do it because they wanted to extend the commercial an extra 10 seconds. It has nothing to, they don't just like who we are. It has nothing to do with that. It has the fact that you can have Big Ten football on those later times. Those 7:30 ESPN slots aren't going to disappear. The 8 p.m. Fox slot is not just going to go away. I guess we just don't do this anymore. This isn't something that happens. No, that's crazy. The entire point, the entire idea is that these networks want to have football on from West Coast time, 9 a.m. till midnight. They wanted East Coast time, noon to 3 in the morning. That is intentional. That is the way that they want this to work. The reason that they have West Coast teams do it is because it would be even more idiotic to have any of the other teams doing it. Rutgers already had to play a fucking 8 p.m. game on the West Coast. That's crazy. That's crazy. So when you have two West Coast teams playing each other, expect that. Expect the late start time because those fan bases will actually be awake. The other side of the country won't be. They're not just going to put Mountain West at that time. You're not just going to get this new iteration of the WAC conference or whatever it is they're working on that's going to be playing at that time. Don't be silly. They got Oregon, Washington, USC, Stanford, and UCLA for the same reason the ACC got Cal and Stanford. So you can fill those late slots with your conference, not to save those schools from having to play in those slots.
Wow, Sam, you've been really mulling that one over there for a while. I'm glad you got that out of your system. Get everybody educated, refreshed.
It's just basic television marketing here, Nick. What are we doing?
Oh, well, just as popular as this show is, we should be the ones driving the television marketing, very obviously. But hey, you know what? Anytime I'll catch a game when I need to, catch a replay of it, because that's another great advantage of now having that Big Ten Plus subscription free for a year as a fan. I enjoy being able to catch all the replays, just like I hope you guys enjoy catching all the replays of the Once a Duck podcast. I suggest you go back through a bunch of our previous UCLA episodes to hear all the things that we could have regurgitated to you, but decided not to. And instead, hey, give us a follow, give us a subscription, and tell all your friends to follow, because this is obviously, as Drew Davis has told us, it's one of the podcasts he has seen. And it can be one of those for you too.
He's checked it out once or twice, people.
He has, man. And that is the best any of our guests have said so far. We got to keep it going, keep that momentum going. And Sam, it's about that time to wrap it up. What do you say?
It is absolutely that time to wrap it up. Everybody, if you have not, follow at Once a Duck anywhere and everywhere on social media. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page that you are checking this out on right now to see all of our episodes, as well as the clips dropping from our previous episodes that are about to start pouring in. We usually wait for a few episodes into the season, then we'll start giving you all those clips across social media and YouTube as well. Follow him at Nick R. Cody. Follow me at Samuel101TS. Nick, tell him the words and let's get out of here.
Hey, before I tell you the words, we want to know who you want to hear on the podcast, and we want your comments, Twitter responses. Hell, reach out, send us a message if you want to keep it anonymous. We're out there, available on all the social media platforms, and you could be featured on the show or get your question answered. So with that, all I got to say is you see the logo, you know the term, once a duck, always a duck. Go Ducks, baby. Let's get a win at UCLA.
See you guys in Pasadena.